My mission is simple, to help you protect your family and keep more of your money. I'm here to help level the playing field for families and those who seek the truth. There's always a new way to make money, but at the end of the day, it's your family's security and your legacy that matter. And I promise to help you protect what's really important to you. Legacy Money starts now. Hey guys, welcome to Legacy Money. My name is Barry Page. I'm your host of the show where we share the truth about money so you can live more, give more, and leave more. I'm excited today to be speaking with Jon Webster. Jon is joining us from Chandler, Arizona. He's an infinite banking practitioner, and we'll be talking about my favorite subject, infinite banking. And we're going to share some concepts with you, some strategies, and how we and Jon uses IBC in his practice. But before we get started, I just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to Legacy Money. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments section below, and we'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. So my goal as your host is to educate and inform, to inspire, motivate, and to share the truth about money. So God gave us the ability to think on our own. And so I encourage you just to think differently at how you look at money. And we're not here to sell you some kind of new shiny object. We simply want to share with you the truth. So with that being said, let me share a little bit about Jon. I met Jon at an infinite banking think tank probably, 10 years ago at least, Jon. We hit it off, and ever since then we've been friends. And Jon grew up in Idaho, I believe. Jefferson, is that right?
Well, I actually grew up in the state of Jefferson, and that's the furthest northern part of California.
Okay.
In the 1940s, we tried to secede, form a new state. We still fly the flag for the state of Jefferson up there.
Okay, well, that threw me off a little bit. So why don't you just share with us a little bit about your background, Jon, where you're from. I know you kind of grew up on a farm, a ranch, and, man, now you're in the big cities and all that. So tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing.
Yeah, so I grew up on 50 acres. I call it a small farm ranch. We had all kinds of animals that we raised, and we lived a lot off of our animals and our gardens, and we worked hard as kids doing chores. Was kind of expected. But the great thing, it was a free life. We had a huge playground, not a lot of money for toys, but a huge playground. And so I always had adventures going on. But the cool thing, my parents lived there my entire life. My dad is still there on our farm, and I went at 18. I went from that area to Idaho. So you're close to correct on, and I
18,
still claim
wow,
Idaho.
Okay, so you were nearby grown at that time, right?
Yeah, and I still claim Idaho as home as well. So, the cool thing about growing up on a ranch and doing chores is it gave me a lot of opportunities in life. It afforded me the opportunities being in a small town that people knew who I was, who my family was, and got me jobs at a very early age. Got me making money that most kids my age wouldn't make.
Yeah. You started a business pretty young, right?
Perspective. Yeah. Started the business real young. I started working very long full-time hours at the age of 12 and farming and ranching. And that carried me on from one ranch to the next. And afforded me things that most kids my age couldn't pay for or buy. Got me into diving into things. I would say that were educational experiences, you know, buying vehicles and tearing them apart and learning how to do that. Yeah.
So,
And
go ahead.
so carrying on from that, it gave me the opportunity to learn that I could learn.
Right. I like that. And, you know, folks, I don't think always realize the work that goes into, you know, farming or ranching. It's a major job, taking care of all that stuff. And so that was kind of your first business, wasn't it? You called it an adventure, a real estate adventure. Tell us a little bit about that job. How, you were 19.
Yeah, actually, my first business, I started a logging operation at 19. Good way to get killed, you know, but I absolutely loved it. I got licensed as a timber operator, did a lot of small logging operations, timber salvage operations, dead and dying. Talk about looking at the West Coast right now and understanding their problems with forest management. I had just enough experience to see the debacle that they've created. But I went back to college, and that took me into my next adventure, as you say, with real estate. I bought a 1904 house, and I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Money Pit.
Yeah,
that was pretty much my house project. And as my mom always used to say, she said that was probably the best education money that we could have paid for, because as I dug into that project and put money into it, I learned one scope of work after another scope of work with regard to contracting and real estate. And again, it goes back to those earlier lessons in life of learning that you could learn, right? I believe the first project I really tackled on that house project was, I knew that it had a faulty foundation. I don't know if you ever read anything in the Bible about building your house on a firm foundation.
Oh, absolutely.
Pretty critical.
Yeah.
And so I had the realization that I needed to lift my house up in the air, tear out everything underneath it, and put a new foundation. Now, I'd never really done any heavy contracting at all, and I got prices for that project from a number of experts, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to afford to pay them, right?
Yeah.
So I decided I think I could probably learn how to do this, figure it out. So I jacked my own house in the air, tore out everything underneath, rebuilt a new foundation underneath the existing house, set it back down. That was the first of many projects in a long-time career of general contracting.
That's sounds like a good lesson in self-teaching there, learning on your own there. So I know you mentioned your mom and you know, kind of your being raised. I know faith and family are important to you. And I was, you know, you mentioned a Bible verse, Malachi 3:10. You recall that? And it really makes it, especially in what we do. You want to talk a little about that?
You know, that's a real important lesson I learned at 18 years old. Now, I grew up with parents that were really strong biblical teachers. My mom could pull a shoestring budget so far to raise 5 kids on a teacher salary, right?
Right.
And so I learned a tremendous amount about money, about budgeting from my parents. But I'll tell you, one of the most important life lessons I had that I can still think of that's influenced my life was at 18 years old. And it actually came from a neighbor of mine that I grew up across the highway from. I spent every free minute I had, I would run over across the highway to my neighbors, and he was a very successful businessman, a rancher, farmer. He had tremendous bloodlines of Percheron horses, big draft horses. He was the president of the American Percheron Association for the United States. He was in our little town kind of a big deal, right? And he was my pal. You know, from the age of 5, I would go over and just hang out with him, doing chores, hanging out at the barn, going and picking up rocks with him out of the fields. And at 18, he asked me to help him with a new foal, new baby colt. And she was struggling with her mom, and he asked me to help. And I remember he's in his 80s, you know, not as strong as he used to be. And that day, I asked him for some business advice. I just asked him, what lessons, what advice can you give to help me create success in life or business? And the first thing he taught me about was God's principles of money. And he taught me a lesson from Malachi 3:10. Taught me that I'm not managing my money. I'm managing the money that God has given me. Right? He taught me that the only place in the Bible God asks us to test him is in Malachi 3:10.
Right.
He says, bring forth your first fruits, test me in this and see if I don't pour down more than you can store up. Right?
Yep.
Now, go ahead.
No. You finish.
So he taught me the biblical principles about money that day. He gave me 2 pieces of advice that really, really stuck with me. The first was understanding that I'm managing. It's not my money I'm managing. It's God's money I'm managing.
Right.
The second key piece of advice, which has influenced my life tremendously over the years, was he said, you also want to find people who make success in life a habit. And you want to build mentorship relationships with those type of individuals. They've got to be willing to pour into you. And you want to see the fruit on their trees. You want to see that some of them are going to be in your industry. Some of them are going to be outside of your industry, but you want to find people who make success in life a habit and build relationships with them to where they will sow into you.
Well, that was good advice. And that was wise of you at such a young age to even ask that kind of question. So definitely good advice. And it sounds like you followed it. So kind of transitioning over to where you are today, you know, obviously we met through Infinite Banking, but when you first got into the financial services business, I'm not sure if you were involved with Infinite Banking from the get-go, but tell us a little bit about how you migrated over into the financial services business.
So early on, started in financial services, just passionate about helping people unhook from the bondage of debt. And we were coaching and teaching strategies of cash flow and cash flow management and some sophisticated systems to utilize open-ended lines of credit to cash flow through to cancel long-term interest, to accelerate debt payoff. We had systems that could help our average client to eliminate all debt, including mortgage, in about 8 to 11 years without impacting their lifestyle and budget. And that was pretty exciting. We built teams of people coaching and teaching clients around the country how to do that. And what happened was, in our excitement about it, it goes back to the life lessons at 18, right? And our excitement about it, we met with a guy that I had a lot of respect for. He'd retired in his late 30s, self-made millionaire, and and we were showing him the sophisticated systems we were using and the training we were using to coach people on how to get out of debt.
Right.
Well, you know what happened was that guy drops a copy of this book, Becoming Your Own Banker, from R. Nelson Nash, on the desk. And he said, if you want to understand what the wealthy do with their money, you gotta understand this.
Right.
And unlocking the infinite banking concept. Now, that's something I'd never heard of, but I'd been around some of the association of this individual, and I'd heard talking about things that I could now correlate related to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grabbed the book, I started reading it, and smoke started coming out of my ears, right?
Right.
I was kind of upset. I was pretty ticked that here I was, almost 30 years old, 35, and I'd never even heard of this, seen this. I'm like, where are they keeping this stuff a secret for, right? And so that's what quickly moved me into the realm of working with infinite banking, becoming your own banker concept.
That's awesome. So tell me about, I know we shared a mentor in Nelson Nash. Tell me about what was it like knowing Nelson personally and getting to know him? What attracted you to IBC from that? What made you come from Arizona to Alabama, down south here?
You know, as soon as I read Nelson's book, I was just engrossed in wanting to know more. And it goes back to at 18, identifying that the place to get knowledge is from the source of the knowledge, right? And I realized very quickly that Nelson was the person who pioneered, who founded, who kind of stumbled into this concept of infinite banking and created and started teaching it. And I wanted to get to the source of knowledge of that concept. And so within 2 months of being introduced to the book, I was fortunate to be invited to a Nelson Nash think tank. And that was just, it was a small gathering of about 40 agents nationwide that came together to learn and share ideas about the infinite banking concept with each other, training with each other. And that's the first time I was able to fortunate and count myself as blessed to have gotten to meet Nelson and associate with Nelson. And Nelson is just, there isn't two sides of Nelson. Nelson's just who he is, right?
Exactly.
When you meet Nelson, if he thinks you're off your rocker, he's going to tell you if you're off your rocker, right? He doesn't hold back. He'll tell you to change your thinking, right?
Right.
And he'll tell you if you're catching pieces of things and not the whole picture. But the time to learn and know Nelson and gain knowledge from him, it still resonates tremendously whenever I read Nelson's books, because you hear his voice through his books. You
Right.
hear him, and you value that time that you've had with him.
Right. And I think that's why we go back to the book so often. I learn something every time. I've read it dozens of times now. And, ironically, I met Nelson. I had read the book and hadn't been to a think tank yet, but I met Nelson at a seminar in Arizona, of all places.
Wow.
So I sat next to him sort of by accident, I guess, fate, and got to know him and Mary. Had lunch with him that day, and just realized right off the bat he was a walking, talking encyclopedia when it came to history and economics, and he was and he knew the word. You know, you could tell he loved the Lord. So I was immediately drawn to him. So now you have a successful practice, and you actually teach others. And when I say others, other advisors, agents across the country about IBC and infinite banking. How did you decide to do that? What made you decide to share this with others and just get more people involved?
You know, I think that a rising tide raises all ships, and I'm passionate about this information getting in the hands of people. People are who need it, right?
Right.
Every business owner, every investor, every family in the country ought to get educated on infinite banking and understand how it will shift their family dynamics financially, how it will shift their legacy, how they can change multiple generations. And so I believe that the best way to do that is through duplication. If I can help to convey knowledge and information to others who can help to convey that knowledge and information to the unreached for that information that can change lives, that's important. And you know, that's a key though, is to be able to duplicate without the problems that you run into. Have you ever seen the movie Multiplicity?
Mm-mm. I haven't. Tell us.
Yeah. Well, Multiplicity, they start cloning. The guy decides he's just too busy, so he starts cloning himself, and,
Right.
and the clone decides to clone himself because he sees, hey, that was good. Well, you can run into some significant problems when you
Right.
start making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy,
Right.
and there's a delicate balance. You've got to duplicate, but you want to maintain the resonance. You want to maintain the message. You want
Right.
to maintain
Integrity.
the clarity, right?
Yes. And I think that's why Nelson wanted to create the practitioner program, which is now the part of the Nelson Nash Institute. So that's awesome. So if you had to kind of pin it down, and we're going to get into maybe some strategy here, but for just the general public, maybe somebody that's learning about infinite banking for the first time, what would you say, if you had to pin it down to, a key thing, what would you say is the primary message that the public just needs to know about money and banking?
You know, the first thing I would say is, have you ever noticed that the biggest buildings in every town in the country, or every city in the country, are the bank buildings? So wouldn't it be better if you and your family owned and controlled the bank?
Wow.
And the banking equation, so that you could bring the profits back to the you and me level, back to your family and your legacy level, instead of building the next big building downtown? Would that impact your family wealth dynamic if 30+% of money didn't flow away from you?
Right.
And the second big thing is protection. Protecting what matters, right?
Wow.
So what if there's a way that your $1 can be protecting and doing jobs for you and your family that bring a level of protection across not just one thing, but potentially 6, 7, or 8 things?
Mm-hmm.
What if those same dollars can do multiple jobs for you? Would that be beneficial to know about?
Absolutely. That's a great analogy there. So now that you've been in business, you've experienced success, and just hearing your backstory there, I know things though haven't always been easy. Tell us about a time maybe where you had some bumps in the road, maybe some things that maybe challenge your thoughts about your career or what you were doing.
There's times where, and I wouldn't say that I've reached success. I go back to a great leadership teacher, John Maxwell, and he says that if many people say, well, it's lonely at the top, right? In leadership, it's lonely at the top. Well,
Sure.
John Maxwell always said, if you're at the top of the mountain and you look around and you're all by yourself and it's lonely, then you're doing something wrong. You're not leading, right?
Right.
And so he says it shouldn't be lonely at the top. If you're in leadership, you should be bringing others with you.
Right.
Right. And so I would say that we can't ever have an attitude that we've reached success, because we need to always be stretching to bring others with us. And I've been blessed. God has met my needs. He has over and over and over. He showed that through faith he'll help us in times of need. I've gone from as self-employed general contracting. I've gone through some tremendous challenges where money shifts take place, where clients suddenly have challenges and don't pay you, and where you're like, wow, I'm strung out on this job, and all of a sudden they're not going to pay me for all this money I've shelled out on their place and their project.
Right.
Really?
Can you give us some details? Maybe what happened? Like, were you hurting for cash flow? Were you had bills due? I mean,
yeah, hurting for cash flow. Where a client, that you trusted and in good faith you did stuff, and you laid out your money, and I put down and paid to rehab projects for an investor, and that investor then couldn't pay, so he says, well, I'm going to make you a percentage owner on the properties that you just paid all this money to rehab, right?
Right.
And then instead of selling the properties, he just sat on them and didn't pay.
Right.
Right. And
that's a drag.
Meanwhile, you're sitting there with wife and kids to feed, take care of, bills to pay, doesn't go away, right?
Right.
And you're like, this scumbucket is hosing me and my family out of money, right? And those situations, what do you do?
Right.
Well, we just passed 8:28, right? It's about 8:30 right now.
Right.
And one thing I've learned early in life in going through troubles is Romans 8:28. And if you come from a farm ranch background, I learned that Romans 8:28 says that for all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's God saying God's in control, right? Even the good, the bad, and the ugly, God's in control. And from a ranch perspective, I learned early on, I shoveled a lot of manure, hauled a lot of manure from the animal pens out to the gardens, right?
Right.
Out to the fields.
Right.
And I learned that
they call that fertilizer, right?
I learned that God can use the crap in our lives as fertilizer to grow a great harvest, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned to depend I learned to call out on God. I learned that, I don't know where the blessing in this is, God, but I know you've got it handled, and I know you're going to use this to grow a great harvest. Right?
Awesome. So, kind of transitioning into your role as an IBC practitioner and getting involved with infinite banking, how did you first use infinite banking in your personal life? What did you use it for? Was it in the business, the cash flow situation, or did you have some personal situations, things in your family? Tell us about that.
So first, I'm passionate about doing what I teach. I'm not going to tell someone to do something that I don't do, right? And so right off the bat, I understood this concept. I got introduced to Nelson. I got multiple banking policies started for myself, my wife, and I was excited about that. Start capitalizing those policies and get capital in there that I could then use towards other investment vehicles as well. I'm always have been pretty excited about real estate investment, putting your money to work, where you can get you can get dollars leveraged into investment opportunities, right?
Right.
And so through IBC, I saw that I could drive money into an IBC policy. I could take loans out. I could use it to kill off other banking entity debt, but I could use it for investment opportunity as well, and put that money to use where it could make really good yields, and I had more control over the situation. I don't know if you've ever used hard money lenders in real estate. Hard money lending can be really expensive, right?
Very expensive. Double, triple, quadruple.
Yeah.
Kind of like credit card debt.
Yep. And if you aren't,
they call them the sharks, right? Kind of.
Yeah. If you aren't servicing that note, they call the deal, right?
Right.
They don't really want your real estate, but they've got enough equity in your real estate that they'll take it if they need it, right?
Right.
And so I saw the opportunity to use IBC to replace hard money lending in real estate investment opportunities.
Gotcha. Well, so speaking of real estate, I know that's kind of your specialty with using IBC. You mentioned the debt earlier, how you like to help families, but looking at it from an investment standpoint, do you have some examples maybe you could share with us about how to use infinite banking with real estate? Maybe something you want to share?
Yeah, there's some, there's some times where that money can do multiple jobs. Like I said, that money that is flowed into an IBC policy can help to protect against multiple perils of life, right?
Right.
It can be protecting from disability with waiver of premium risk, right? It can be protecting from critical care, long-term care. It can be protecting from taxes, right?
Right.
How many other vehicles do you have where your money will compound and grow tax-free, where you've got access to it for retirement income tax-free, where whatever you don't spend in your lifetime passes tax-free to your heirs? How many other vehicles are there that do all those things? There's none. And then the fact that it can continue to compound when you choose the right companies to work with, it can continue to compound uninterrupted while you take that money into secondary investments, i.e. real estate. And it can continue to compound tax-free while you take your money into secondary investments, i.e. real estate. And you have complete liquidity use and control, and you have complete control over the lending process and the lending repayment process. So you can go into an investment real estate property. You don't have to service the hard money during the time that you're rehabbing and turning that project, because you are the hard money lender. You're in control of the banking function. And at the end, when you clear out and you take your profits out of that investment, you can repay the hard money lending, i.e. your infinite banking policy, and restore that working capital and place your profits into a place where they can now continue to grow, compound, tax-free.
Awesome.
Now,
So, similar to what you mentioned earlier with the duplication, your dollars are duplicated, doing dual jobs, multiple jobs. So, so that's great.
Yeah. Now, the one most powerful thing that is protecting is and I'm pretty passionate about back planning, thinking about protecting what matters most.
Right.
Right. What matters most? Well, your family, that matters most, right?
Right.
And so the powerful thing about IBC is you've now got a place that protects from multiple perils. It's protecting for retirement. But the biggest peril that we face is it's protecting from life, loss of life. That's, it's a given. Everyone's going to pass away at some point in time.
Right.
But you can put your money to work in a place that protects from every major life peril and protects against the risk of death, protects your investments against the risk of death, protects your business partnerships against the risk of death, protects your family from the risk that you might not be there to collect on that investment.
Absolutely.
Right?
Nobody thinks it's going to happen to them, right?
They don't, but it does. How many times have you seen people whose families were devastated by the lack of protection that was needed?
Right.
How many unfortunate times do we see GoFundMe sites out there just trying to pay for final expenses, not leaving a legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to pay for some expenses.
Sure. So when it comes to real estate, do you have any specific examples, just maybe either something you want to show us or something you just want to share? Like, how can people, of a lot of people that start out with IBC and they want to kind of transition into real estate or some other type of investment other than the stock market, what would you say is the best use or a good way for people maybe to get their feet wet doing that?
Yeah, let me pull up a quick slide, and I could just talk about a interesting play that many people wouldn't, and it may be complex, so they may not wrap their mind around it super quick. It may take some follow up, may take some further education, but I could show a real quick glance.
You should be able to share your screen, and if you just want to kind of give us a big picture of what that might look like.
Would look like.
Just a simple. All right, I just see a blank screen there. I do see your screen. You have anything on there? There you go. Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
So let's say that someone has a partnership plan, and they're going, hey, what's a partnership plan? Well, you may be in a partnership plan with the government. I don't know if
Uncle Sam.
Most business. Yeah, I don't know if most businesses that you've seen the government run have done really well, but I know the post office is looking for about $25 billion bailout right now.
Right.
Because they've typically done a pretty good job of managing and running business operations. But here you go. You got a $500,000 partnership plan. That means that probably about $250,000 of that is your money, and about $250,000 of that may be your partner's money, right?
Might have multiple partners, right?
And, yeah.
Federal partners, state partners.
Yeah. And the reality is that's what we call a deferred plan, which means that what's deferred mean? It just means that they've postponed the tax and the tax calculation to an unknown rate and date. We have no idea where taxes will be at in the future, do we? Unknown rate and date. But let's say that you could go out and you could utilize money from that partnership plan. You could go out and replace the tax liability portion with a $250,000 mortgage, and you could put your $250,000 into a $500,000 of total real estate. That means you've got a mortgage replacing the tax liability, right? And that means that your real estate has about a 50% loan to value cost or ratio on it. That's a pretty decent equity position. Lenders like that. They're going to give you favorable rates on your investment properties. But why would you do a mortgage? Why? I mean, here we are talking about become your own banker. Why would you do a mortgage? Well, the mortgage isn't for your money. The mortgage is actually replacing the tax liability money that you caused when you took money from your partnership plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what if you could finance that tax liability over the next 30 years on a depreciable asset that creates cash flow, and because of inflation, the future inflated or devalued dollars would pay back that tax liability over the next 30 years off of real estate income cash flow? Would that be beneficial?
Absolutely.
So why a $250,000 mortgage? It replaces that tax liability. That's just basically a hand swap, right? You owe taxes, but that mortgage replaces it. That means you still put the $500,000. Now you've released that money from partnership, and you cover that tax liability. And the tax liability is basically a trade with the mortgage money. So the banker is floating your tax liability, right?
Right. That's good.
Why is that important? Because it can give you a tax deduction on your investment real estate that can help offset your long-term tax liability that you covered with a mortgage. Right?
That's awesome.
So if there's a way that you could transition some business or some partnership retirement assets from a unknown partnership plan to a future tax-free retirement plan, and you could double or triple your passable net worth at the same time, would you want to know about that?
Absolutely.
What if you could diversify your retirement assets instead of one bucket with a partnership? What if you could diversify your retirement assets to actually give you cash flow, equity growth, tax deductibility, depreciation, and appreciation for retirement asset buckets? Instead of one bucket, you've got multiple. Would that be better?
Yes.
Right?
That's great, John.
So
I like
that's
like
just
that.
a really short little snapshot of a really big picture item with regard to investment in real estate and understanding how to transition through IBC in doing that.
That's a great example. I like that. And of course, there's some details, and you can ask your questions or comments if you have them. We'll try to get to that. And we're about out of time, John, but just can you you spoke when we got started, you mentioned a couple times, you mentioned legacy. Of course, that's the name of our show here, Legacy Money. But what are your thoughts on the future, maybe for our children? That's can you kind of give us some insight into what that looks like for you and your family? Or I love my
my wife and my kids, and they are my. I've got 3 daughters. I've got 4 sweethearts. You know, they all love me, and I love them, and I want to be around as long as I can for them. But I also am passionate about legacy. You know, what will people remember about you when you're no longer here? And who matters that remembers the legacy that you leave behind after you're no longer here? You know, there's a lot of people that will remember Barry Page, right? There's a lot of people that will remember that he's passionate about biking, about having fun. He's an adventurer, right? But the ones that matter is what are the people gonna carry from your life, and that's our family. And I want to ensure that through my actions, my family is well taken care of, their needs are met, that I leave them with, if I'm no longer here, that I leave them with a legacy that impacts multiple generations because of how I teach them to think and the tools and investments and vehicles that I use in accomplishing the tasks of living life. So in my family, you know, we have IBC policies across multiple generations that will impact my children and my children's children, right? I think I heard something in the Bible about that one time.
That's awesome, Jon. And, you know, especially in today's world, you know, when you mentioned the future, just taxes being uncertain, but so many things are uncertain. And unfortunately, our country is straddled with debt. And so we need to teach our children stewardship. We need to, you know, leave a legacy of stewardship, if nothing else, you know, from the lessons that we've learned. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, Jon, and thank you for being with us today. You know, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, comments, you want to learn more about infinite banking, just leave that in the section below. But Jon, tell everybody how they could get in touch with you, how you want them to reach out to you if they want to.
They can reach me at our website is MPG Wealth, MPG like miles per gallon, Wealth, WEALTH.com. And they can email me at Jon, that's Jon, at mpgwealth.com. And my phone number, 480-200-0247. And love to passionate about sharing and educating and helping people understand this process. And you know, I believe that when people have knowledge, they can make wise decisions.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing with us. I want to thank you for listening and joining us today. And we'll see you in the next episode of Legacy Money. Have a great day.